The heat had settled into the land long before the rangers slowed their vehicles and stepped out, but the stillness beneath the acacia felt different, heavier, as if the air itself had paused. The lion lay on his side where the shade thinned into dust, ribs lifting unevenly, breath shallow enough to be missed if someone did not stand and watch. Flies gathered at the edges of his eyes and mouth, testing the boundary of movement, retreating only when a muscle twitched beneath his tawny hide. His tail lay slack, the tuft pressed into dry earth, and the broad chest that once pushed through grass and conflict rose now with effort. No one moved quickly. The men and women who approached had learned that urgency could be loud even when it was silent. They watched the way his ears flicked without lifting his head, the faint tightening along his jaw, the dull glaze that comes when the body has already spent most of what it has. Poisoning left signs that could not be ignored, and exhaustion followed close behind it. The decision arrived without ceremony, shared in glances and small nods, the kind made when there is no guarantee waiting on the other side. They stayed at a distance that respected his space, kneeling where the shade softened the ground. The acacia above held its leaves still, and the smell of resin and dust hung low. The lion's breathing caught once, then steadied again, shallow but present. A low sound slipped from his throat, not a roar or warning, just a release of air shaped by discomfort. His eyes opened briefly, amber dulled by strain, tracking movement without focus, then closing again as if light itself weighed too much. Time stretched in fragments. The rangers marked it by changes so small they might have been imagined. A shift of the forepaw, the slow drag of breath finding rhythm, the way the flies hesitated longer before landing. One of them murmured, "It's okay," not as a promise, but as an offering carried softly into the space between them. No one reached out. Intervention here began with restraint, with the discipline to wait and witness. Around them, the land continued its quiet work. Wind slid through grass in narrow lanes, lifting seed heads and setting them down again. Somewhere beyond the trees, a bird called once and fell silent. The lion's flank trembled as his body fought to clear what did not belong, muscles tightening and releasing in slow cycles. His head shifted a few inches, nose pressing closer to the soil, drawing in scents that anchored him to the present. The weight of staying pressed on everyone. Walking away would have been simpler, easier to carry home. Staying meant accepting uncertainty, the possibility that effort would meet an ending anyway. Yet they remained, measured and calm, reading the language written in breath and posture. The lion did not look at them again, but his breathing deepened by a fraction, enough to be felt rather than seen. As the sun edged lower, the shade lengthened and cooled. Light filtered through thorns and leaves, settling across the lion's back in thin bands. The flies lifted and scattered with the breeze, and for a moment the only sound was the slow, stubborn rise and fall of his chest, meeting the evening halfway. Care unfolded at the pace the lion's body allowed, measured in pauses rather than minutes. Hands moved only when necessary, and when they did, they traveled low and slow, staying within the rhythm of his breathing. Water was offered first, not poured, just enough to touch his lips and let instinct decide. His tongue shifted once, dry against dry, then again, a small motion that changed the air between everyone watching. The antidote followed with the same restraint, delivered with precision learned from other quiet emergencies. No one spoke above a breath. A single voice murmured, "Easy now," and then fell away. The lion's flank tightened, then loosened, muscles remembering how to respond. His breathing, once uneven and shallow, began to settle into a pattern that could be followed, counted, trusted for a moment at a time. Stillness became the shared language. The rangers knelt where they were, resisting the urge to adjust, to check, to hurry what could not be rushed. The lion's ears shifted toward them, not pinned back, not lifted, simply angled, as if acknowledging presence without judgment. His eyes opened again, this time lingering. They did not harden or widen. They watched, heavy-lidded, absorbing shapes and movement without panic. The land held its breath alongside them. Heat softened as clouds thinned the light, and the smell of damp earth rose faintly where water had touched dust. A breeze moved through the grass, carrying insects away from the lion's face. He exhaled more fully now, a slow release that drew another breath behind it. Each cycle arrived with less effort than the last. Trust did not arrive as comfort or closeness. It appeared as the absence of fear. The lion did not attempt to rise, but he also did not recoil. When a hand hovered near his shoulder, he remained still, skin twitching once beneath fur before settling. His tail shifted slightly, then rested again, no longer rigid with tension. The quiet between breaths stretched, and with it, the sense that his body was choosing to stay. The rangers watched for signs that mattered. The color of his gums, the way his chest expanded, the subtle strength returning to muscles that had nearly given up. They adjusted nothing unless necessary. Care here meant allowing space for recovery to begin on its own terms. Another soft line slipped into the air, "You're okay," offered without expectation, then reclaimed by silence. Small changes continued to register. His breathing held through longer pauses, and his nostrils flared with purpose rather than strain. A foreleg bent, testing weight without lifting, then relaxed again. The Rangers noted these signals quietly, sharing looks instead of words. They stayed grounded, letting minutes pass unmarked. The lion's whiskers trembled once, responding to scent and sound. He did not retreat from their presence. The space between bodies felt balanced now, neither closed nor tense, a fragile agreement maintained by patience alone. It lingered carefully, shaped by restraint, attention, and respect, holding steady as dusk edged closer around them all without demand, noise, or force, remaining quiet. As time passed, the lion's focus sharpened. His gaze followed a movement of grass, then returned to the humans, untroubled. He swallowed, slow and deliberate. The poison's grip loosened its hold, not gone, but weakening. Exhaustion still lay heavy, but it no longer owned every breath. When evening crept closer, shadows lengthened without urgency. The lion remained beneath the acacia, breathing steady enough to blend with the wind. Nothing more was asked of him. Around his resting body, the grass stirred, and somewhere beyond sight, life moved on, patient, waiting. Night arrived without ceremony, slipping between branches and pooling beneath the acacia until the ground disappeared into shadow. The Rangers withdrew a little farther, enough to give space, not enough to abandon watch. Their shapes softened into silhouettes, still and listening. The lion remained where he was, body stretched along the cooling earth, breath moving through him in a low, steady rhythm that could be felt more than heard. In the dark, each exhale seemed to mark time, slow and deliberate. The bush changed its voice as the heat faded. Insects rose and settled into patterns, and distant calls moved across the plain like passing weather. The lion stirred once, a small shift of weight, claws scraping lightly against soil before resting again. His head lifted only an inch, then settled back down, chin against the dust. Exhaustion kept him close to sleep, but his breathing did not falter. It held, steady enough to follow, steady enough to trust. The Rangers remained quiet, their attention tuned to subtle changes. No lights were aimed at him. No movements were made without reason. One of them whispered, "Still with us," so softly it barely left the mouth, then let the words dissolve into the night. The lion's ears flicked once, responding to sound without alarm. He did not turn. He did not tense. His body accepted the dark as it came. Hours passed in fragments. The lion drifted between rest and wakefulness, muscles loosening, then tightening briefly as his body adjusted. A low sound rolled from his chest once, not distress, just the release of air shaped by fatigue. His breathing deepened further, pauses lengthening between each rise and fall. Poison no longer pressed as hard against his system. The antidote and water did their quiet work, unseen but present. The land seemed to settle with him. Wind brushed through the grass in soft waves, bending seed heads toward the earth. Somewhere nearby, hooves moved and faded, life passing without intrusion. The lion's tail shifted once more, then lay still. His whiskers trembled, catching scent and movement carried on the air. Even in rest, awareness lingered, thin but intact. Just before dawn, the darkness thinned. The sky lightened from black to deep blue, then to gray. Cool air gathered beneath the acacia, and the lion drew it in with a longer breath, chest expanding more fully than it had before. His eyes opened, slow and heavy, focusing this time. He lifted his head slightly, holding it there, testing the moment. His breathing remained calm. The Rangers noticed the change without moving closer. They watched as the lion shifted onto his chest, forelegs folding beneath him with effort, then holding. It was not strength yet, but intention. He paused there, resting, breathing steady, alive in a way that felt different from the night before. No one spoke. There was nothing to add. As the sun edged over the horizon, light spilled across the grass and touched the lion's mane, catching dust and turning it gold. Birds began to move, their wings cutting softly through the morning air. The lion lowered his head again, resting, breath slow and sure. In the quiet of early light, with shadows pulling back across the plain, life had chosen to stay. Morning unfolded slowly, as if the land itself were careful not to disturb what had been regained. Light gathered across the plain in pale layers, warming the grass and thinning the last traces of night. The lion remained beneath the acacia for a long while after dawn, resting on his chest, eyes half open, breath steady and deep. Strength did not return all at once. It arrived in increments, testing him quietly from the inside. A shift came first in his posture. His forelegs straightened slightly, muscles tightening with purpose rather than strain. He paused there, holding the position, letting balance settle back into familiar patterns. His breathing quickened for a moment, then slowed again. The Rangers watched without moving closer, reading the change in his body the way one reads weather. Nothing was rushed. The space between them remained intact. When he rose, it was deliberate. Hind legs pushed against the earth, hooves of dust lifting as weight transferred forward. His body swayed once, corrected itself, and stood. The lion remained still after that, head lowered, shoulders rising and falling with controlled breaths. Exhaustion still lingered in the way he carried himself, but it no longer owned him. He was upright, present, aware. For a long moment he did not move away. The open land stretched behind him, familiar paths waiting to be taken, yet he stayed where he was, tail hanging loose, ears angled forward. His head lifted slowly and his gaze traveled, not scanning for threat, not searching for escape, but settling on the humans who had kept their distance through the night. There was no challenge in his eyes. No softness either. Just attention. The kind that holds without demand. The Rangers did not respond with movement or sound. They stood as they had stood before, calm and still, allowing the moment to exist without shape. One of them breathed out a quiet, "All right," more to the air than to the lion, then said nothing more. The lion held their presence for a few seconds longer, amber eyes steady. His ears flicked once, adjusting to the morning sounds as birds lifted and insects stirred. The wind moved through his mane, lifting it slightly before letting it fall back against his neck. Then he turned his head away, not abruptly, not with urgency, but with closure. He took a step forward, then another, testing strength across uneven ground. Each movement carried more certainty than the last. He paused once more, adjusting his footing, then continued on, body aligning with the rhythm of the land. He did not look back again. The acknowledgement had already passed. The Rangers remained where they were, watching his form move through grass that brushed against his legs, swallowing him slowly as distance grew. There was no celebration in their stillness. Only release. Survival, they understood, was not always measured by rescue completed or danger removed. Sometimes it was measured by restraint honored, by the choice to stay present without control. As the lion disappeared into taller grass, the morning widened around them. Sunlight brightened the plain, shadows retreating toward the trees. The acacia stood quiet behind them, its shade now empty. Wind carried the scent of earth and growth, and somewhere beyond sight, the lion moved on, carrying strength that had been returned just enough to choose his own direction again. The lion moved without haste, each step placed with care, as if the land itself were guiding his weight forward. His shoulders rolled in a steady rhythm now, no longer tentative, and his tail lifted slightly behind him, brushing the tops of the grass as he passed. The distance between him and the acacia widened, then softened, until the tree no longer felt like a marker but a memory already settling behind him. Tall grass closed around his body in stages. First his legs disappeared, then the long line of his back, then the muted gold of his mane as it caught the light one last time before slipping beneath green. The land absorbed him without pause or ceremony. There was no sign left behind beyond flattened stems that slowly rose again, returning to their original shape. In moments even that trace faded. The Rangers did not follow. They stood where they were, allowing the space to complete itself. Silence gathered naturally, not forced, filled only by wind and the small sounds of morning continuing as it always had. In the absence of movement, the weight of what had passed settled in quietly. No one spoke. There was nothing to confirm, nothing to conclude. What remained was a shift too subtle to name. The lion had carried his life back into the grass on his own terms. Intervention had ended not with hands or voices, but with distance restored. The people who stayed behind felt the change not as triumph, but as humility. They had entered the edge of another life briefly, then stepped back when it was time. The acacia stood unchanged, its shade no longer occupied. Sunlight filtered through its branches and fell on bare ground where the lion had rested through heat and night. Insects returned to the dust. A bird landed on a low branch, then lifted again. The land did not mark the moment. It simply continued. The Rangers remained for a while longer, letting the quiet settle fully. Their posture loosened, shoulders lowering as vigilance released its hold. What they carried forward would not be spoken of loudly. It would live in the memory of measured breaths, of waiting without certainty, of choosing presence over control. Gratitude moved through them softly, not toward themselves, but toward the fragile permission they had been given to witness survival without claiming it. Eventually they turned away, steps slow and unremarkable. The grass brushed their legs as it had brushed the lion's. The path back did not feel separate from the one he had taken, only different. Behind them, the plain widened, empty and full at once. Far out, beyond where sight could follow, the lion continued on, body steady, breath strong enough now to blend with the rhythm of his movement. Wind moved through the grass in long waves, carrying scent and sound across the open land. The sun climbed higher, and the morning stretched forward, unchanged, holding within it a quiet memory that asked for nothing more.